You're listening to The Signal Daily. Hi, I'm Shorbari, your host for The Signal Daily podcast. This is the episode for 4th June 2024. In this episode, we decode why Hollywood's big-ticket summer films are flopping at the box office. We're also looking at what's at stake as the counting of votes begins for the Lok Sabha elections of 2024. Hollywood must really be missing Barbie and the atom bomb. Unlike the blockbuster magic of Barbenheimer, none of the big films this summer are pulling big crowds to theaters. In the US, Memorial Day, celebrated on the last Monday of May to honor those who died serving in the military, is a gold mine for cinemas. Think of it like this. Memorial Day is for Hollywood what Eid is for Bollywood. Families hit the theaters and the box office hits the jackpot, sometimes raking in as much as $100 million over the holiday break. Not this summer, though. The much-hyped Furiosa, a Mad Max saga starring Chris Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy, which is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, has unfortunately crashed and burned, earning a measly $30 million over Memorial Day weekend. Apparently, this is the lowest Memorial Day haul for a major Hollywood film in 30 years. For comparison, last year's The Little Mermaid, released in the same period, reeled in $118 million over the weekend. And overall, it also seems that ticket sales for the US and Canada are down by 12% year on year. So, as Taylor Swift would say, this is one cruel summer for Hollywood. But what's behind the Tinseltown summertime sadness? Well, call it sequel fatigue. So last year, audiences had made it clear as day that they were done with sequels and prequels and ready for bold new films. But if you glance at this summer's lineup, we've got Deadpool and Wolverine, Despicable Me 4, Bad Boys Ride or Die, and of course Furiosa. It seems that the studios have entirely missed the memo. As BBC's film critic Nicholas Barber says, none of these uncalled for sequels has that X factor which makes a movie a must-watch event. So then, did Hollywood learn nothing from Barbenheimer after all? Honestly, it's too early to say, but we can safely declare that the sun has set on Marvel superheroes, and grown-ups in latex bodysuits aren't making a comeback anytime soon either. But where is Hollywood headed then? That we can't predict until next year. I say this because this summer was already a train wreck in the making. And last year's writer's strike, followed by actors going on strike, put productions and new projects on ice. Besides, movies take ages to make, so any shift in studio strategy won't show up overnight. But the good news is Hollywood is regaining its appetite for risk-taking. According to the Wall Street Journal, big studios are betting big on bold moves again. They have promoted executives who love risky auteur films. Take Disney. They just put David Greenbaum in charge of the live-action division and 20th Century Studios. Greenbaum's the guy behind Oscar darlings like Nomadland, The Shape of Water, and Poor Things. In a recent earnings call, Disney CEO Bob Iger also hinted at fewer sequels. He said, and I quote, "Do we need a third or a fourth iteration of a movie, or is it time to turn to other characters?" Well, if you ask us, our money is on novel stories. Bury the superheroes and torch the sequels. And now, for our second segment, we are going to bring you deep dives on stories from the world of technology, business, policy, and anything that leaves you with food for thought. After 2.5 months of elections and high-voltage campaigns, the day is here. The counting of votes will begin at 8 a.m. today, so by the time you listen to this podcast, the counting process might be well underway. While India prides itself on holding the largest democratic exercise by scale, by no means was this a seamless election season. Around 39 repollings were carried out this year owing to allegations of malpractices and EVM malfunctioning. In fact, the Election Commission, or the EC, said that it received as many as 4.56 lakh violations on the C-Vigil app. Now, one important thing to note is that the EC also held a press conference right before the counting day, which is a rare event. In the presser, the Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar assured the robustness of the counting process. He said that the poll body will address all the queries raised by the multi-party delegation regarding the counting process, noting that, and I'm quoting him, The system of Indian elections is such that it accounts for a thorough post-election scrutiny. Challenge us if you think we are going wrong somewhere. End quote. Now, why this move was interesting is perhaps because since the past few years, the independence and the transparency of the Election Commission as an autonomous body has come under question. There's been a lot of scrutiny around the Election Commission's political morality and the sanctity of the electoral process as a whole. Firstly, over its changing stance on electoral bonds. So initially, it had raised strong objections against electoral bonds, mostly because of the scope that it has for money laundering, only to change its mind later. Then, several civil society organizations also expressed that the EC was unable to stop or discourage hate speeches and other instances of model code of conduct violations by the Prime Minister and his party. Not to mention, ex-election commissioner Arun Goel's sudden, unexplained resignation right before the elections also raised some eyebrows. But anyway, the EC took action in 14 model code of conduct violation-related complaints that came up in the course of this election season, leading to 13 notices, 5 of which went to the BJP and 4 to the Congress, and 1 each was to the TDP, the Aam Aadmi Party, the YSRCP, BRS, and the TMC. The EC also enforced 6 censures and 3 temporary campaigning bans. Let's also not forget that this very crucial election took place under the influence of AI deepfakes and misinformation, which kept fact-checkers on their toes. There were accusations and counter-accusations from both the ruling party and the opposition about the misuse of AI, yet the real problem is actually the lack of strong regulations. But moving on, as we come close to the conclusion of this election season, let me tell you the stakes are really high for both the incumbent government and the opposition. Will Narendra Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party be able to pull off a hat-trick and make new inroads? Or will the opposition be able to regain the ground that it steadily lost over the last decade? That's the big question, and we'll know the results soon. But if you ask me, at the end of the day, it's not about who wins or loses. It's about the issues that the common man has been facing. Despite India touting itself as one of the fastest growing economies with a robust stock market and real estate, what has really stuck out like a sore thumb is the state of inequality. Unemployment is one of our biggest headaches right now, as is high inflation, which is eating into household expenditures and adding to the vast economic divide between the rich and the poor. In fact, according to a new study by the World Inequality Lab, now India's richest 1% holds 40% of the wealth, while the bottom 50% own just above 6%. So will the new government be able to address these problems? That's what we'll have to watch out for. If you like listening to The Signal Daily, please show some support. Rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'd love to hear what you have to say about this podcast. So feel free to shoot an email at hello@thesignal.co. This episode was researched, written and produced by me, Shorbari, and Anup Senwal. Edited by Venkat Anand. Mastered and mixed by Yash Hirve. You can catch this podcast every morning on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are thesignal.co on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.